This is MichMash, a weekly conversation where we try to unjumble an important and sometimes under-the-radar story that affects you. I'm Alethia Kasben.
And I'm Zach Gorchow. Alethia, when we closed 2024, our fellow co-host Shane and I looked ahead to 2025. And something we both flagged was how would the returning Senate Democratic majority and its leader, Senator Winnie Brinks, and the new House Republican majority and its leader, Representative Matt Hall, work together. We're about 10 weeks since Hall got the gavel as Speaker. How are we doing so far?
Well, oh boy. It is mostly going exactly as I think everyone thought it would, with a Democratic-controlled Senate and Republican-led House, butting heads. One surprise was we did see a significant deal occurring between both sides on the paid sick time and minimum wage legislation. But otherwise, we are currently living through a time where the Senate is suing the House for not presenting bills to the governor for signature. These are 9 bills left over from last term when Democrats did control the House. The Republicans in the House are sending Senate Democrats items that are mostly just non-starters, or at the very least, not really being negotiated with the Democrats. Things like an income tax cut, an early budget proposal that does not cover everything a normal budget would. And on the Senate side, they've moved, a Freedom of Information Act expansion bill, pretty quickly. These would expand public records laws to the legislature and the governor's office. Many House Republicans have voted for them, including Speaker Hall, but he said, I'm not going to bring those up. So that was a lot.
That was a lot. Oh my gosh. Take a breath. At times, I think what we're seeing reflects how polarized the nation is politically. Here we have the House will adopt a non-binding resolution saying transgender girls should play in boys' sports, not girls' sports. Then the Senate adopts a non-binding resolution supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Then the House will adopt a non-binding resolution declaring no state funding for local governments refusing to cooperate with federal immigration authorities on deportations. And then the Senate, not to be outdone, adopts a non-binding resolution condemning President Trump's pardons for those convicted of crimes in the January 6, 2020 attack in the U.S. Capitol. But let's talk about Brinks and Hall specifically. What are you seeing there?
So Speaker Hall is out there holding these hour-long media availabilities / press conferences. He spends a lot of time sort of talking about what the House is doing and the Senate Democrats are not doing. He's calling Democrats wacky. He's sticking up for his actions, saying the Senate needs to, take up what they have done, while Brinks is being more subdued, right? The Senate is putting some pressure on social media for the House to act on the Freedom of Information Act bills. And Senate Democrats have introduced, their own tax credit proposal with targeted relief toward families. But, Brinks isn't, calling out Hall in her own, press conferences. He's really owning sort of the show there. And then this week, in a moment to me is reminiscent of the Alexander Hamilton musical. Brinks and Hall are now exchanging letters about their ongoing lawsuit. Senator Brinks first demanded Hall send these bills to the governor. And then Hall responded, to put it succinctly, no.
One of my favorite sayings, also one of my favorite beers, too, I might add. To summarize this lawsuit, last year, and please stay with me here, I'm going to try to get through this as fast as I can, but it's important. Before Hall was in charge of the House, Democratic leadership failed to make sure the last 9 bills it had passed were presented for signature. So these are bills that actually passed the legislature, were ready to go to the governor, but for whatever reason, the House never actually walked them over to the governor's office. Oops. These were big bills, like requiring all local governments and school districts pay a bigger share of health insurance premiums, for example. Now it's a new term. Brinks and others, mainly Democrats, are arguing even though it's a new session, Hall has a duty to send those bills to the governor. Hall and others argue, hey, Democrats, maybe you should have taken care of business when you had the gavel, and the Republicans don't have to and possibly can't even present these bills because it's a new term. This issue is likely to be decided by the Michigan Supreme Court when all is said and done, so stay tuned.
It's a really interesting dynamic. After the House and Senate successfully negotiated the minimum wage and sick time bills, there seemed to be some momentum that big issues could be passed. But now, it feels like we're really back in our partisan corners, doesn't it?
For sure. The wage and sick time issues had a firm deadline. So the usual procrastination and posturing impulses you and I both know all too well tend to govern how the Capitol operates weren't in place. Now there's no real deadline for anything other than the budget when the fiscal year ends on September 30th. And then the next deadline is just that Senator Brinks and Governor Whitmer will be leaving state government on January 1, 2027. That is 21 months away. So there is a long way to go here.
We're going to take a short break here, but stick around because when we come back, we're talking to Genesee County Sheriff Chris Swanson, a Democratic candidate for governor. Welcome back to MichMash. I'm Alethia Kasben.
And I'm Zach Gorchow. At MichMash, we continue to speak with the first candidates for governor in 2026 to learn more about their campaigns and plans for the state. Joining us today is Chris Swanson, the Genesee County Sheriff and Democratic candidate for governor. Sheriff Swanson, welcome to MichMash.
Glad to be here.
Well, we're thrilled to have you here. And Sheriff Swanson, you have been the sheriff in Genesee County for about 6 years, and you've spent your career in law enforcement up until and since becoming sheriff. Why do you want to make the jump to governor?
Well, it's a natural progression. Genesee County is the fifth largest county in the state. It's a big county. It represents all types of communities. But more importantly, the role of sheriff is exactly what the role of governor does. We enforce laws, we protect people, and we maintain order. In addition to my law enforcement background, I've been on faculty at University of Michigan for 27 years. So the teacher, instruction, leadership all together, it's the right time. And when there's a tragedy, I take care of business.
So, having spent your career in law enforcement, you just touched a little bit on this, on, how this deals with other issues. But governor, you would deal with an array of issues statewide, right? Like healthcare, schools, state parks, taxes, regulations and economic development. Are you, prepared to take on so many new issues?
Yeah. Anybody running for this role should be able to do the actual business of the role while they're campaigning. And so this is a decision that I made years ago. In preparing for that moment, there's one thing I do know about anybody running for governor is you don't become the governor by being a governor. You become a governor by being a leader. And so when it comes to Genesee County, we have a huge budget. I work with 3 branches of government. As the emergency manager, we take care of issues that come our way, but also those things that keep the business of the state of Michigan going, we're just scaling it up. So you mentioned Department of Education. If there's one thing I know, it's about education. And so how do you keep that funded if they pull, federal funds? And same thing with healthcare. I've been a paramedic since I was 20 years old, and being in public health and seeing that protecting Medicaid and Medicare and DHHS, which accounts for nearly 65 to 70% of the state budget, those are issues that you need to know going into it. There's no issue that's in that $80 billion budget that I'm not used to or that you can't just build out as part of the next role. So it's an easy transition, all those topics you mentioned.
So what's your argument to Democratic voters about why they should nominate you over the other 2 Democrats in the race right now, Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist and Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson? They're 2 statewide officials. They've traveled this state. What's your argument there?
Well, the first thing, it's not an argument. I think Democrats need to join together. And I said in my announcement on the 6th of February, they're not opponents. They're options. And if you look at Michigan Democrats, when I was working with the White House last year with the Biden administration, doing a commercial, and then I worked with the DNC and the Kamala Harris campaign, I saw inside the need of what Democrats are looking for. And then when you look at the results, what happened in November of 2024, this community of Democrats, these voters, the people are looking for something completely new and different because the playbook that was given last year did not work. So I bring a completely different type of Democratic option. I bring one that has a different, unique energy, one who has a unique skill set. That's the difference. And no disrespect to anybody else running. They've done some amazing things well, but I'm not part of that. I'm a different way of doing things. And I think that's what I've seen from the highest level, even talking to, national organizations. They're looking for wins. They're looking for something completely different. James Carville's writing about it all the time. Democrats need something new, and that's what I bring.
So, since the November 2024 election, it seems, Democrats have, been struggling to sort of unify, find a message. Do you think you have the answer to these questions, Democrats have right now and how they can move forward?
Yes, and first of all, I'm thankful for Curtis Hertel, our new chair, that was part of this whole process. You need leadership at the Democratic Party head, but I know that when I'm working and I'm seeing across the state, and I have been for years, the message of protect, serve, and unify, that resonates to everybody. And so when you look at what do the Democrats need, they need to protect people, protect their constitutional, their civil rights, their bargaining rights, their reproductive rights, their Two Amendment rights. They need to protect the economy. They need to protect businesses. Those are things that are relative to both sides, but that's what the Democrats need to get behind, is what means a lot to the people. And then, of course, the service leadership. Government has been seen many times as an us and them. We're going to bring that to make the state government more accessible by doing the things that a servant leader does, and that is being on the front line. I talked about the Sheriff Service Network, where I'm going to be able to work with these sheriffs statewide, that they have a direct access to the governor's office to solve local problems. And then if there's one thing I understand about unity, in May of 2020, when this committee was about to burn down and it was expected, right there in the middle, I saw what unity can do, how hate can go from hope. And so when you put all that together, the protect, serve, and unify model, the common sense approach, that's what Democrats need, not only just from Chris Swanson, but from the federal level to the state level to the local level, all the way down to school boards, supervisors, and trustees.
So after you announced, the Detroit News reported that a leader of the anti-abortion movement in the Flint area had said you had once told her you opposed abortion, but then you put out a statement saying, and I'm quoting here, "I support a woman's right to choose because I trust women and believe decisions about abortion and reproductive care are best made by women with their doctors, faith, and family." Some groups that support the legal right to an abortion said that didn't sound strong enough to them. So let's back this up a little bit. Did at one time you think abortion should be illegal?
No, and I've never made that public statement. And I understand Judy Clymer, and I appreciate the statement, but that's not accurate. That's why we were so adamant on putting that statement out that night and continuing to do that. To your second point, I understand, and I have been very proactive. Just 2 weeks ago, I met with Planned Parenthood and ACLU and Reproductive Freedom. The women of this state can trust and can count on me backing reproductive rights, comprehensive care. I tell you that because I want them to know that if something comes across that even tries to challenge that, it's got to get through me and it's going to be vetoed. That is the decision that's made by women of this state. They made it clear, and they have a friend in me. That's the statement, and that's what I stand by.
I'm curious, did you vote for Proposal 3 in 2022 to enshrine the legal right to abortion in the Constitution?
Yes, we supported it. Yes.
You've said that your campaign will not be an attack campaign. Can you tell us, what that means? Are you saying you're not going to be critical of your opponents?
Yeah, and I think people are exhausted by that. There's different philosophies between myself and the other two, and that's okay. Those are conversations that people need to have. That's why I call them options. I think when you come to a position where you are attacking in order to try to find some ground, that's not what people are looking for. We will defend our positions, but attacking is when you're proactive. And I think it goes back to what you were saying, Zach. The party's looking for something different. The people are looking for something different. And so I'm not going to use things to attack, because all of us have been through a lot. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to be able to do for the people of Michigan, and we're going to stick with that lane. If there's something that we need to explain or defend, then we'll be happy to do that. But we're going to keep it positive, and we're going to make sure that the message stays that way.
So you alluded to this earlier, you took a very out-front position supporting Vice President Harris over President Trump in the 2024 campaign. You mentioned you spoke at the Democratic convention, you appeared in television advertisements, and in those ads, you were very critical of Trump's actions on January 6, 2020. What do you think of how Governor Whitmer is handling Trump now, and how would you interact with the president if you become governor?
Well, there's no misunderstanding what I felt and how I still feel about what happened on January 6th. And what's unique about me is I have something to compare it to. I had something that here in Flint, it could have gone exactly the way it did in January 6th, but it took leadership to keep that from happening. And that's why I was so aggressive coming out saying that could have been handled different. And then when they were pardoned, all 1,500, that was a knock on law enforcement. That was a knock on people that were attacked. And that cannot go understated. But to your point, he's the president. The people have spoken. In the state of Michigan, and the governor has to work with the federal government. The funds that come from the feds to support a lot of what Michigan does, there has to be some type of cooperation. But when something comes and it goes against Michigan and the residents, there's a time to stand up and push back. And you need to have leadership. And Governor Whitmer's doing that. And it's being done in a way that she has the inside conversations that none of us have right now. But I guarantee that her best interest is to look out for the 10 million people in Michigan, Republicans, Democrats, independents, children, elderly. What's best for Michigan? That is the top priority, but you have to work with the federal government. And as governor, I would do the same thing.
Here in Lansing, economic development issues are, under a huge microscope right now. What is your view on using state funds or tax incentives to attract new businesses or, get existing businesses to stay or expand?
So that's a great question, because just yesterday I was talking to a leader of the iron workers, and he's down in Indiana building 3 data centers. Now, AI and all of these software engineers that are coming out across the country, they have to land somewhere. And what we have in Michigan is a great area to attract data centers, to attract software engineers, to build out a brand new type of industry, including new manufacturing, build up the automotive, but also manufacturing, and to work with your state and your local leaders. You have townships and cities that were elected by their people. And a lot of it is a lot of messaging. And so when you bring in industry, have those talks at the get-go. Many times you can get through a lot of issues if you have the right people at the table in the beginning. And when you do those stakeholder meetings and people walk the same path, that's how you attract new businesses. So yeah, do I think tax incentives in order to attract businesses and to perhaps push that long-term investment into Michigan is important? Absolutely. Business and communities have to work together. And Michigan is a great place because we have 49 other competitors. And when you talk about economy, how do we raise the state tax? Some of that is just new business, not just putting it on the taxpayers to say, give us more of your income tax. Let's create more jobs and better paying jobs. And ultimately, that money will roll out into the industry within that local community, including housing, cars, dining out, school system, and that raises everything.
How familiar are you with the mega site proposal in Mundy Township? That is supposed to get some sort of federal backing that is, kind of in question now with President Trump in office. Do you want to see that deal close? Do you think it'd be good for the community over there?
It's going to be good for the state of Michigan. When you talk about every other state community that competed for that mega site, you're talking 9,000 to 10,000 jobs that have an average salary of 100,000 plus, and the ripple effect that would have for that community. And Mundy Township has been tenacious on making sure that what they're doing there is communicated. They bought up 99% of the land, and they have cleared the land. And I do think that the federal approval will come. The state is working hand in hand. They have all their state and local approvals. And I understand there's some people that are concerned about it, but that's why we have local officials to help navigate it. We've got people on the ground here in Genesee County that are public relations officers that are meeting with individuals individually to say, hey, let's explain what this is and why we use water and why water won't be contaminated. To be unclear is to be unkind. And so when you look at what the mega site's going to do for this community, the entire state benefits. And when you have one, others will come.
So to win a statewide Democratic primary, a winning candidate usually needs one of two things and eventually both to have a chance to win: the ability to spend millions of dollars or have an outside entity do it for you, and name recognition. So you don't have the name recognition, not yet anyways, but can you raise the money you need? Historically, it's tough for a Democrat not from the Detroit area to raise the money for a statewide primary.
So I'll answer the first question. The name recognition is far bigger and more broad than most people can understand. I have built a social media platform for the last 15 years that reaches 2 to 3 million people on shares per month. And when you look at what we've done with Ghost, our human oppression strike team, working with 64 of the 83 sheriffs in the state of Michigan, Ignite, and partnering with branding, also traveling the state. And when we talk about the walk on May 30th, a lot of that is just connecting the dots where people say, that's the sheriff from Flint that did the walk, did Ghost, did Ignite, created an environment where people thrive, that partnered with Jelly Roll, partnered with Oxford, partnered with Harvard. A lot of it, Zach, is just communicating and people connect the dots. It's way too soon. Most people are just reeling over November, let alone thinking about 16 months from now. So the name recognition is there. And I've had such a great rapport with all of our state and local media that when you come up the 75 corridor and you go down to Detroit and Dearborn, that I go to 2-3 times a week for years, that Dearborn Flint community, the Jewish community, the Black community, they know Chris Swanson. And so I can tell you that the name recognition is only getting bigger and bigger, and we're going to keep traveling to make sure they know. To your second point, we broke a barrier. We broke a ceiling 2 weeks ago. And I think people are going to be shocked and stunned as to how much we've raised in our three. And when you look at the giving, when you see that, local unions here in Saginaw that are maxing out an $83,250 donation from their PAC. And you have commitments at the announcement from the plumbers local, the iron workers local 25 statewide, the operating engineers 324. When you have local Teamsters that are coming at the announcement, I've never seen that. I have built a relationship with labor for decades, including the UAW, the AFL, including all of our trades. I'm a member of the American Federation of Teachers, Local 6244. So all of those are the pathway to the Democratic victory. And we've got some headway. Let's just say that. More will come, Zach.
If I could follow up, you said you broke a barrier on the fundraising. Can you tell us, can you put a number on that yet?
You'll see, but it's a big number.
Okay.
So, you are a very energetic person. You have a different style than what a lot of statewide politicians are like. Not really what, we're used to seeing in this bubble, right? So, there's certainly, people in politics who might be thinking, well, what's the deal with this guy? So what drives you to step out in this way? Do you think voters are going to appreciate this different presence you have?
Well, I will tell you that I choose to be this way. I have experienced in 32 years so much death and violence, and so much brokenness with my own hands and my eyes. And so I could either be the negative, pessimist, everything is wrong kind of person, but I'm not built that way. And when I'm building people back, when I'm dealing with addicts, when I'm dealing with families, they're looking for hope. And when hope comes in an optimistic way, even when there appears to be no way out, that's the light. I can tell you this, I've been an optimist and an energetic person my whole life. And I love building into people this inspiration. And with that, people get inspired. It breathes new life into them. So when it comes to politics, I can tell you firsthand, people are looking for something new. There are people that have great experience and great ability to come up through the political ranks at the local level and higher, but they don't want to be attacked. We're carving a new way to say, you may get attacked. You may have some things negative, but look at what the people need. They want a hero. They want a cheerleader. They want somebody who's going to say, we're going this way and it's going to be okay. That's what a sheriff does. So I see this as a great tool. I can't turn it off. One of the biggest critiques I get, to your point, is he always like that? Yes, I will find good in anybody and anything.
Well, Sheriff Swanson, thanks so much for taking the time out of your schedule to join us on MichMash, and we'll see you as the campaign progresses.
Thank you, everybody.